How are you guys doing? Today is Tuesday, July 13th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on DJ LeMahieu. The elite second baseman for the New York Yankees actually turns 33 today, and for this episode, I'm just going to go through, of course, the accolades and the achievements and what he's been able to accomplish from the moment he hit the limelight of the MLB to this very moment where he is one of very few players in MLB history to win a batting title in the American League and the National League. Let me repeat myself. He might be the only player in MLB history to finish with a batting title in the American League and a batting title in the National League, playing against two different sets of pitchers and still finish with the best batting average. But everything else he did is amazing, but that is the feat that I want to stick here. And if you're not familiar with him, he's a pretty tall guy. And if you see him play, he's a very technically sound hitter, and he's a very good defensive third baseman as well. So just to go into a little bit of the background, he originally came out of California. He would end up playing baseball with LSU before eventually getting taken in the second round of the 2009 MLB draft. He was taken with the 79th overall pick by the Chicago Cubs. And he would eventually make his debut in the MLB in 2011 in his age 22 season. In that season, DJ LeMahieu would go on to play 37 games in a season where the Chicago Cubs finished with a 71-91 record, finishing towards the bottom of the division. In those 37 games, he finished with 15 hits and maybe 4 RBIs as he finished with a 250 RBI with a 250 batting average on the season. Following that year, he would have played the very next year with the Colorado Rockies as he was traded by the Chicago Cubs. And he would go on to start his career with the Rockies in his age 23 season in 2012. That season, he would play 81 games in a season where the Rockies would go on to finish with a 64-98 record, which is actually the worst record that they've actually had in that span of time. In those 81 games that LeMahieu played, he would finish with 68 hits on the season, 2 home runs, 22 RBIs, finishing with a 297 batting average and 742 OPS, as he was still continuing to fight for that roster spot that he'd been longing for all this time. He would go on to come back to the Rockies for his third season in 2013. In his second season in Colorado, he would go on to play 109 games in a season where the Rockies would go on to finish with a 74-88 record. They won 10 more games in the previous season, but still finished fifth in their division. In his age 24 season, in the 109 games he played, he finished with 113 hits. This would be the first time in his career he had more hits than games played, as he finished with 39 runs, 2 home runs, 28 RBIs, finishing with a 280 batting average and a 673 OPS, as he was still continuing to establish himself as sort of at least a role player that the Colorado Rockies could rely on. He came back for his fourth season in the league in 2014. In his age 25 season, he would play 149 games in a season where the Colorado Rockies finished with a 66-96 record. They won 8 less games in the previous season. But in 2014, DJ LeMahieu would go on to be named a Gold Glover for the first time after being named the Wilson Defensive Player of the Year the previous year. In 2014, in addition to being recognized as a Gold Glover at his position, which is the best defensive player at his position at second base, pretty good position to win the Gold Glove in. In the 149 games he played, he finished with 132 hits. He finished with 5 home runs and 42 RBIs as he finished with a 267 batting average and 663 OPS. So he did establish himself as the best defender in his position, but his offensive game was still, of course, trying to get there. And then the next year, he would kind of put it all together. In 2015, in his age 26 season, his 5th year in the league, he would go on to play 150 games in a season where the Rockies would finish with a 97-65 record. They would go on to officially make the playoffs for the first time in a bit since he's been on the team. LeMahieu would go on to be named an All-Star for the very first time in his career after being named a Gold Glover the previous year. In this season, he would go on to hit 173 balls in 150 games, finishing with 85 runs, and all of those feats were the most that he's ever put up in a season in his career. In his age 26 season, he finished with 21 doubles. The second time he had 21 doubles in his career. 6 home runs, which by then was a career high. 61 RBIs, which is also a career high at that point. He would steal 23 bases, which is the only time he stole at least 20. So that's the most he's ever put up in his career. He did all this while finishing with a 301 batting average and a 746 OPS. This would be the first time he finished with a batting average over 300. And at least by then, he established himself as at least a very good player on the Rockies that, when at his best, could be an all-star. The next year was when he kind of turned it all around was when he started to take that next step in his legacy. In 2016, his 5th season with the Rockies and his 6th season in the MLB, he would go on to play 146 games in a season where the Rockies would end up going 75-87. In this season, they would win 7 more games in the previous season, in a season in which they didn't make the playoffs. 2015, they did not make it. But in 2016, he finished with 192 hits in 146 games as he finished with a 348 batting average, which led the National League. He would go on to win the batting title. In addition to that, he would finish with 32 doubles, which by then was the most doubles he ever put up in his career. He finished with 8 triples on the year, which even now is the most triples he's ever put up in a year. He finished with 104 runs, which at that point was his career high in runs. He would go on, along with his 348 batting average, he finished with a 911 OPS, which is the highest that he ever put up in his career up until that point. He would miss the All-Star game, but once again, finishing with the batting title is no soft feat. Following his 2016 season, he'd come back to Colorado for his 6th season there and his 7th season in the MLB. In his age 28 season, he would go on to play 155 games for a Colorado Rockies side that would finish with an 87-75 record. They finished with the 3rd best record in the division, and they would end up going to the wild card where they ended up losing to the Rockies. But looking back into his season, DJ LeMahieu would be named an All-Star for the 2nd time in his career. In 155 games that he played, he finished with 189 hits, which would go on to be the 3rd season in a row and the 4th season in his career. He finished with more hits than games played. He had 95 runs on the season, which is the 2nd most amount of runs he ever put up, 28 doubles, 8 home runs, 64 RBIs. He finished with a 310 batting average. This is the 3rd straight season in which he finished with a 300 batting average alongside a 783 OPS. He would be named in addition to being named an All-Star for the 2nd time in his career, he would be named a Gold Glover as well. So while batting 300 and finishing with 189 hits in a 155-game season, he was the best defensive player at his position, which of course is no small task. Following his 2017 season, he would come back in 2018 for his 7th and final season with the Colorado Rockies. In his age 29 season, he would play 128 games in a season where the Rockies would finish with a 91-72 record. That would be the best record that they had since he had been there. They had the 2nd best record in their division, as in this season, DJ LeMahieu would go on to be named. He would miss the All-Star game. In the 128 games he played, he finished with 147 hits. The 4th year in a row, he had more hits than games played. He finished with 90 runs on the season. The 3rd season in a row, he had at least 90 runs to his name. He had 32 doubles, which ties his 2016 season for the most doubles he had up until that point. He finished with 15 home runs, which at that point was his career high in home runs, alongside 62 RBIs. He would finish with a 276 batting average, which is the lowest that he'd have in over the last 3 seasons. He would finish with a 749 OPS. Even though he missed the All-Star game, he was awarded his most recent Gold Glove and his 3rd and most recent Gold Glove in his career. He has not won a Gold Glove at his position since. And following his final season in Colorado, or I guess they would go on to the playoffs, and then they would end up beating the Cubs in the wild card game, but they lost to the Brewers in the NLDS. They couldn't even make it past the NL Central. Following that season, DJ LeMahieu would eventually get signed to a 2-year deal with the New York Yankees that most recently ended this year before he re-signed it. In his very first year in New York in 2019, his age 30 season, he would play 145 games in a season where the New York Yankees would finish with a 103-59 record, winning 3 more games than they did the previous year and actually winning their division. In the 145 games he played, DJ LeMahieu would finish with 197 hits, which is the most hits DJ LeMahieu has ever put up in a season with the Yankees. Yankees. He finished with 109 runs, which is the most runs he ever put up in a season. He finished with 33 doubles, which once again is a career high. He finished with 26 home runs, another career high, 102 RBIs, another career high. He finished with a 327 batting average and an 893 OPS, as he was named an All-Star for the third time in his career, and he has not been named an All-Star since. He would be named a Silver Slugger at the position, which is the first time he's ever been named a Silver Slugger at his position. And he would finish fourth in the American League MVP race that saw Mike Trout take home, that Mike Trout ended up taking home. Following that season, the New York Yankees would end up they would end up going kind of far in the playoffs. They ended up beating the Twins. They swept the Twins 3-0 in the first series before losing to the Astros in the ALCS, before the Astros ended up losing to the Nationals. Following that, he would come back for the 2020 season, which many MLB fans are aware was shortened due to COVID. He would end up in a season that was shortened to 60 games. DJ LeMahieu would end up playing 50 of those 60 in a season where the New York Yankees would make the playoffs, finishing with a 33-27 record, second best in their division. In that 50-game season, DJ LeMahieu would finish with 71 hits on the season, alongside 41 runs in those 50 games with 10 doubles, 10 home runs, and 27 RBIs. In the 50-game season, he would finish with a 364 batting average, which led the American League, which gave him a batting title in the National League and the American League, of course, an amazing feat that I would refer back to the very beginning of this. He would lead the American League in an on-base percentage, the first time and the only time he has ever led the American League in on-base percentage. He had a .421 on-base percentage. The second time he had an on-base percentage of at least 400. He would finish with a OPS of 1,011, of course, out of 1,000. Which is the on-base plus slugging percentage, which would lead the American League. That's the only time he's done that. He led the league in OPS plus, which, to get a sense of what OPS plus is it's a weighted OPS statistic, which means we're like the 100th, we're like the exact average baseball player is a 100 OPS. If you're 120, then you're 20 points better than average. He had a 177 OPS. And following that season, he would be named a Silver Slugger for the second and most recent time in his career. And he would finish third in the American League MVP race that saw Jose Abreu from the Chicago White Sox take it home. Following that regular season, the New York Yankees would end up beating the Indians in the American League Wild Card Series before losing in the next round to the Rays in the ALDS, who ended up winning the American League before losing to the Dodgers in the World Series. And of course, following that season, this leads us into this current season where DJ LeMahieu has currently played 88 games for a New York Yankees side. He's played all these games for a New York Yankees side that at the moment is currently holding the fourth best record in all of baseball. This season, he has more hits than games played. At the same time, he's batting a 269 batting average alongside a 711 OPS. And of course, by the end of the season, we'll truly get to see how good of a season this is. But if we're looking at DJ LeMahieu's entire body of work, we're looking at a player that isn't far off from being one of the best offensive and defensive players to ever play his position in the game. I think it's a shame that he's only been named to the All-Star game 3 times, but at the end of the day, it's not my place to vote. But once again, I want to thank everyone once again for listening to this piece. I want to wish DJ LeMahieu a happy 33rd birthday. If you ever get a chance to watch him, he's wearing number 26 for the New York Yankees. And of course, I know it's tough to watch the Yankees, but it's not tough to watch DJ LeMahieu. Once again, like I said, I want to thank Baseball Reference, the MLB websites for giving me the facts and figures that I need now, and I got to thank everyone for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and I will catch you guys tomorrow with another episode, and I even have another elite profile after this. So until tomorrow, thanks once again. I hope all is well, and peace out. I'll catch you with another episode after this.